Welcome to Hybrid Management Technologies using Azure Stack HCI. My name is Thomas Maurer. I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft. And in this session, I'm going to talk to you how you can actually use Azure Hybrid Management tools to manage your on-prem infrastructure, but also your Azure environment and how you can connect things together. Now, there are a lot of reasons why people would go and deploy a hybrid environment. Obviously, you get a lot of benefits from using Azure Hybrid services like Azure Backup or Azure Site Recovery, which I will show you in a little bit. But the main thing is that you can make your on-prem environment better, right? There are just things you can't really do, things they can't really scale, things are difficult or complex to do. And by using Azure Hybrid Management Services, you can make things a lot easier. So when we are speaking about hybrid, there are basically two approaches to that. And as you know, you're probably already an expert now on Azure Stack and Azure Stack HCI. However, I'm still going to mention that and how they work together. So on one side, one part of hybrid or one hybrid approach can be bringing cloud services to your on-prem environment. And that's what we have Azure Stack for. So Azure Stack delivers to you Azure services to the environment where you need it, right? Think about scenarios where you don't have internet access, where you don't have access to the cloud, or applications can't really deal with the latency to the cloud. So in that case, you can deploy an Azure Stack integrated system where you need it, and it's always accessible from your local environment. And you can still use Azure Cloud Services. Another scenario is where you are in a regulated environment, or you have regulations and other things in your country, which basically doesn't allow you to store data outside of the country. And in countries where you don't have a Azure data center in place, this can be very difficult. So that's where Azure Stack can also come in that place and give you that consistency between Azure, but in your country and under your terms. The third thing is, we speak with a lot of customers where we see that they actually want to use the cloud, but they're not really ready yet, and they're looking for a way to build and modernize their application and get ready for the cloud, but still being in their own data center. And that's all great, and for that we have Azure Stack, where you can have consistent cloud services on-prem. Now on the other side, a lot of customers already running stuff on-prem, right? They're running Windows Server, they're running SQL, they're probably already running containers. You run your Azure Stack HCI environment in different branch offices or in your main data centers. And you want to just use those Azure services like Azure Backup, Update Management, all those great services which are available for Azure virtual machines, but you also want to leverage them on your on-premises environment. So this is where we say, okay, let's make it easy to connect your Azure services directly from your Windows Server environment using, for example, Windows Admin Center to connect these services. And to do that, we have a lot of technology here. So we have Windows Server, for example, we have Windows Admin Center, and we have Azure Stack HCI. And Windows Admin Center is basically, as you already know, a tool, a web-based management tool for your Windows servers. It allows you to remotely manage your servers, and it uses PowerShell remoting in the backend to connect to your different servers, and it allows you to do management you couldn't do before, like, for example, remotely manage the certificates or devices without RDPing into your systems. And Windows Admin Center is also a big part of Azure Stack HCI. It allows you to manage your Azure Stack HCI and your hyper-converged infrastructure with a web-based UI, which is awesome. Now, an optional part, but a very important part, is the hybrid connectivity. So with Azure, with Windows Admin Center, you can easily connect Azure hybrid services to your on-prem environment and connect your servers to use those services. And that's what I'm going to show you and talk about in that short session. So let's start with disaster recovery. There are a lot of challenges with disaster recovery, right? Usually there is a lot of cost involved when you do disaster recovery. You have to pay licenses, you also have to write hardware. Things are very complex usually, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges. Disaster recovery usually is not something which is super easy, and that is something we really need to address here. Think about a company which runs multiple locations, branch offices, but also stores maybe, or factories, and setting up all the disaster recovery between different sites can be really, really challenging. So you need to know, okay, which factory is now replicating to which other location, or think about companies where they only have one data center. So where do they basically replicate their virtual machines to? All that are really serious challenges. So this is what we're going to address with Azure Site Recovery. And I want to give you a quick demo how that looks like. So here we are in Windows Admin Center, and I'm already connected to my Hyper-V server here, which again is a remote PowerShell connection. I didn't install anything on that Hyper-V server yet. What I did though is I connected and registered my Windows Admin Center with my Azure account, so I already have access to the different Azure services. What I also did is I already added the recovery server configuration, or the recovery server agent, to my Hyper-V server. So it's already pre-configured. I registered it. So everything done with Windows Admin Center. So I said, okay, I want to have this server enabled for Azure Site Recovery. It automatically installed the Azure Site Recovery agent on my Hyper-V server, and it created the Azure Resource Group, the Recovery Vault, and all the things needed which need to be part in Azure. Obviously, if I already have an existing disaster recovery environment with Azure Site Recovery in Azure, I can also leverage that as well. This demo I show you is like with a single Hyper-V server, but it also works with a Azure Stack HCI cluster, or a Storage Spaces Direct cluster, or just a single Hyper-V cluster, right? So what I'm going to show you now is I'm going down to my virtual machine management. And as you can see here, I have a couple virtual machines running on that Hyper-V server. If I go to inventory, you can see, okay, which 4 virtual machines I'm running here. And now I wanted to protect that app2 server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on More, go down to Protect VM. And this will now open up the wizard. Now, since the server is already connected, you can see here to which description it is connected. You can see the Azure region which will replicate to, and the Azure Site Recovery Vault. What I then can do is I could create a new storage account for that VM or use an existing one. Now, I'm not going to do that because the initial replication will take some time, so let's cancel this. But I'm already replicating and protecting the app server 1 here. So you can see here on the right side, it says protected. So that means the virtual machine is replicated to Azure and everything is working fine. So let's open up that link. It will bring me directly to my Azure Site Recovery Vault, where I can see my virtual machines which are replicated. You can see that it's healthy and that the status is protected. That means the virtual machine is replicated to Azure and it's ready to be failover in case of a disaster. Now, if I go to that virtual machine, there's still a couple of things I need to do and can see here. So I can see here the replication is healthy, server is protected, and you can see here when the last replication happened. Again, I need to do a couple of things. So you can see here the agent was clever enough to basically check the name, but things like the Azure Resource Group or the virtual network I still need to define. It also decided, okay, that's the size of the virtual machine, and mapped it to an Azure size. So I already have done that. When I fail over the virtual machine, it will take the right size. So what can I do now with that virtual machine? I have a couple of options here. So the first one I want to talk about is the test failover. So a lot of disaster recovery solutions are great. They replicate, they tell you everything is fine. But actually the first time you see that it's working is when you actually do a failover. Now, this is obviously not how you want it to be. You want to be sure that things are actually working. And test failover basically creates you an Azure virtual machine as it would do a failover. But it does that in a separate virtual network. So it creates a new virtual network completely isolated from your production environment, So you can actually test if the server really works, if everything works up. You can even do that with multiple servers and then see if they work together, right? So you're sure that your failover is tested and that those things are working. The other thing is doing a failover. This is like what you would do if something now happens to that Hyper-V server, right? The server is, for example, not responsible anymore, it's broken, the whole location is down. You could just go to the Azure portal, click on failover, and it would create the virtual machine in Azure, start it up, and you could run it. And the last one I want to talk about is the planned failover. So think about you have maintenance in your data center coming up tomorrow, or on the server system itself. But obviously users still need to work. So what you can do is a planned failover. In that case, if you click on the planned failover button, it will shut down the local virtual machine on the Hyper-V server. It will replicate the latest changes, so you don't have any data loss. And then it will start up the VM in Azure, and basically users can access that again, and the system is running. By the way, this is also great if you want to do migration to Azure. Now, the great thing about Azure Site Recovery, the costs are very low. So basically what you pay for is the storage you need, and you pay a fee per virtual machine you replicate, but you don't pay for the virtual machine itself until you actually do a failover, right? So what I also need to mention is that the first 30 days are basically free. So if you do migrations, you don't pay anything except for the storage of that virtual machine, of that replication. So now just think about it, how much of complexity this takes away. Think about small deployments where you only have a couple of virtual machines, like small companies, also like large companies in their data center, how they can leverage Azure Site Recovery. Or then especially think about these companies which have multiple locations, like stores where they run a couple of virtual machines, application servers, and things like that, which they need to protect. Or they have branch offices or factories across the globe where they need to look at where do I actually replicate that virtual machine. So where is another location or another office I can replicate to? So I need to know, okay, location 1 replicates to location 2, location 5 to location 8, and so on. But if you take Azure Site Recovery and take Azure as a target, it makes it very simple. It takes away a lot of complexity and makes it much easier. And with that asynchronous replication, you also get even if you can also run that in like scenarios where you don't have enough, like a lot of bandwidth, or not have a real reliable internet, right? Those are like Azure Site Recovery can handle this even if there is not a constant internet. So, for example, if there's a connection interruption, Azure Site Recovery will just basically pause and will come back when the connection is there again. Another big part of Azure Site Recovery is also that you can bring your initial application and basically do a export of your configuration of your local storage. So for example, if you replicate a virtual machine, which is like 2 terabytes in size, and you want to bring that to Azure, but you only have a very slow internet connection, you can also use our import service to basically bring that initial replication, send that using hard disks to our data center. So this is Azure Site Recovery. And again, I showed you how you can set it up with using Windows Admin Center, and especially also on Azure Stack HCI. However, Azure Site Recovery also works with VMware environments. So you can do that with VMware. You can use System Center, for example. You can configure that. And Azure Site Recovery can do a lot more than just do a single VM replication. The thing I just showed you, that's great when you have like a couple of VMs and you want to fail over them. However, if you have like hundreds of VMs, you probably want to do a little bit more than that, right? You don't want to do fail over every single VM. And for that, you can create recovery plans. And that you can say, okay, I can a group of VMs which get started or fail over for the first time. And then you can, for example, add some custom tasks and scripts which can automatically get executed. And then you start up the second group of virtual machines and then the third group. So you can really have an order. And in the best case scenario, you just have one button to press to start that failover plan, and this will do the whole failover scenario for you. The next thing we are going to talk about is update management. Now, there are a couple of challenges with update management. So first of all, you probably run physical servers, you run virtual machines, you run them on-prem, you run them in the cloud, you run Windows Server and Linux servers, and it's rather difficult to keep them current, right? You have different update management solutions depending on where those VMs are running, and they sometimes you just don't have control over it. You don't have that single pane of glass to basically see what is going on. And then you need to make sure that basically every server is up to date, and you also should have a centralized place to basically then deploy those updates to these systems when they're in their maintenance window. Now that's where Azure Update Management comes in. And Azure Update Management is great. You can use it for Azure virtual machines. You probably have already tried it, but you can also use it for virtual machines on-prem, right? So virtual machines running on Azure Stack HCI or running on Azure Stack, you can use Azure Update Management. It basically checks the update state and if they're compliant with the latest update policies which you set. And then you can basically go and deploy these updates to Windows or Linux computers running on-prem or in Azure or even in other cloud providers. And then that allows you obviously to have not need of having different management tools for your update system, for your update deployments. So let me quickly show you how that looks like. So here we are in the Azure portal. Exactly, we are here in an automation account, and under Update Management, you can see that I have one VM already added, one Azure VM already added to that Update Management solution. You can see that this VM is compliant. It has all the important updates installed. And I can now add other VMs to that Update Management solution. I could press on the Add Azure VM button, or I could go and add non-Azure virtual machines. But what we're going to use is we're going to use Windows Admin Center. So we're going to the Update extension. And here you can see here, I could manage the local updates on that specific system. I could go and configure that. But what we are going to do is we're going to connect that to our Azure Update Management solution. So I'm going to click on that and we'll add that system to my Update Management solution. So here I select the subscription where I deployed that. I'm going to select an existing resource group for that solution. And then I can obviously automatically check the region. And I can then select the Log Analytics workspace, which is important for the Update Management solution. And again, I choose the Azure Automation account, which I just showed you. And then I click on Setup. This will now do the following. It will install the Azure Update Management agent on that Windows server. It will connect that to the right Update Management solution and will start reporting. Again, this will take a while until all this information shows up. So if you try it, think about it, that it will need some time to basically deliver that data. So if I now go back to the Azure portal, you can see here now my server shows up here. You can also see that it says it's a non-Azure VM, which is correct because it's on-prem and it's not compliant. So let's fix that and create a new update deployment. Give it a name. We call this one now on-prem. Doesn't matter what we do, but we want to update our on-prem. We can then go and, for example, use groups. In a production environment, you probably want to use groups. For us now, we're just going to select a single virtual machine. So I'm going to search for that machine. You can see here now my two virtual machines, my registered virtual machines show up. I can then select our on-prem server and click OK. And then I can do some additional configurations. I can select which update classifications. I can exclude updates if I want to. And then most importantly, I need to schedule the update deployment. So I can also do date and time, but I can also do one time or recurring runs. I can say, okay, weekly or even monthly. I want to do that. Run some post or prescripts. And then I can also configure the reboot options here. Now, so let's create that deployment. and this will now take a while until it's scheduled. It will then go out and start the maintenance window for that server, and will start patch that server. So you can have a look. If you look at deployment schedule, you can see that here it's now scheduled. We can see the next runtime. And if we go to history, we can see here when it's done. We can see here our environment. As you can see, it took 10 minutes to patch that server. You can go to that and get some more information. With that update deployment, we basically patched one server. It can be physical and virtual machines, and we installed 3 updates. So we have all that information here. And if I go back now, we can see here that all my machines here are compliant and have the latest updates installed. So this was the Azure Update Management demo. Azure Update Management is not just available through Windows Admin Center or in Azure directly, but the great thing is it's also integrated into Azure Stack. So you can basically use the extension and download that in the marketplace, and then someone can actually, if they deploy a VM, automatically add the VM they deploy on Azure Stack to a workspace, and then basically it shows up in the Azure portal. The great thing here, it shows up as an Azure VM. Because Azure Stack is basically Azure, you get that information that this is an Azure VM. Okay, so let's talk about the last thing I want to talk about. There's a lot more obviously I could show, but I want to show you something I get asked a lot. Now, depending on the customer you probably have a lot of servers on-prem, and you have maybe a couple of VMs running in Azure. I mean, there are customers which run the most servers or all of their servers already in Azure, but depending on your scenario now, you want to start like also taking care of the couple of servers or manage these servers you run in Azure, right? And let's say you only have like 2-3 VMs in Azure, you don't have a site-to-site VPN. So how do I now manage these servers? So what I can obviously do, if I go to the Azure portal, I could go and add that server using a public IP address, open up the remote management port of that VM, of that public IP address in the network security group, and then remotely manage that system. However, why would I expose a port to the internet if I don't need to, right? So what I'm going to show you here is how you actually can manage Azure VM from a local installation of Windows Admin Center without exposing it to the internet. So let's have a quick look. Here's my Windows Admin Center environment. I have here in Azure, I have a VM deployed. You can see this VM has a private IP address, the 10.0.0.5. And now I could add that, but if I do ping that VM, since this VM is running, I obviously cannot reach that. I don't have a site-to-site VPN or anything in place, so why would that work? Can't really work. Now, instead of using the public IP, now what we can do is we can go to the Windows Admin Center gateway and use a feature called Azure Network Adapter. For that, we go down to the network settings. And here you can see I have my network adapters, my usual network adapters on that server, where I can do like manage IP addresses and things like that. And then what I can also do is I can now say, okay, I want to add an Azure Network Adapter. Now again, here I can then select the subscription I want to connect to. I then can select the region. In my case, I will take West Europe. That's where my virtual machine is. And then it also selects automatically the virtual network where the virtual machine is deployed. And you can see here's the gateway configuration. And now I could click on create. And this would create me the Azure Network Adapter. But I already created one here. And if I click on connect, this will now spin up a point-to-site VPN to that Azure gateway. And you can see here connected now successfully. And if I now go and see our ping here, now obviously I can reach that virtual machine. And that means I can now also go and add that server from Windows Admin Center. I can say, okay, I could just add the server here, but if I have multiple virtual machines, I can also go to add Azure VM. So I do sign in. I select the subscription where the server is hosted. And then I can see here, like, okay, that's the resource group my virtual machine is in. I can then select the virtual machine I want to use. It will then detect the IP addresses. And now we can see here I can also select the private IP address, which I want to use, and then add that server. Again, this makes it super easy to connect that. And now I can click on that. I can then enter the username and password for that virtual machine. And I click on continue. And then basically connected to that system. So I can then start managing my Azure VM from Windows Admin Center, which is installed locally in that case. And I get all the information. You can see here the name of the virtual machine. You can see here which operating system is running. And I can basically do everything I can also do with an on-prem virtual machine. Again, this is just one scenario where you probably want to do that. You can also deploy Windows Admin Center in Azure if you want to, and start managing your on-prem VMs in the same in the opposite way if you want to. There are really a lot of different options depending on your use cases. For people who might be just want to use the Azure Management Tool, you can do that too. There are a lot of different options when it comes to hybrid and management. So that was the Azure Network Adapter demo. I just want to wrap it quickly up. Again, we have hybrid integration, and with Windows Admin Center, which runs on top of Azure Stack HCI, we can do a lot of different things, and this is great for small deployments, larger deployments, and especially if you run hybrid connected deployments, Windows Admin Center gives you that benefit that you can easily connect those Azure hybrid services from your Windows Admin Center installation. So you get features like the Azure Network Adapter I just showed you, Azure Site Recovery, Azure Backup, Azure Update Management, Azure File Sync, and Azure Monitor. And there will be others coming for that hybrid integration, which makes a lot of sense if you're doing hybrid management. So if you want to learn more, I put here something together with a couple of links where you can basically go and read more about Azure Stack, Azure Stack HCI, or also some information about how you work with the hybrid management. We have a little video series where you can basically go and see how you basically really step by step do set up those hybrid services directly from Windows Admin Center. There's also videos and blog articles how you can integrate that into Azure Stack. So we basically can do update management directly in Azure Stack with all the VMs you deploy there. And we have a lot of different things here about these different solutions. Now, you should also follow our team blog. So my team blogs about different IT Pro and IT Ops related topics on itopstalk.com. Again, this can be different topics around Azure, Azure Stack HCI, Windows Server, Active Directory, PowerShell, Kubernetes, like all the things about what IT pros and IT ops are basically doing. You can also follow us on Twitter. You can use the hashtag ACOps, which we are monitoring. So if you have any questions or you want to be in contact with us, you can use that hashtag. You can also follow me on Twitter and on my blog if you want to. I always try to post a lot about hybrid solutions, especially about Azure Stack and Azure Stack HCI. And with that, I want to say thank you that you followed my presentation. If you have any questions, please contact me, contact our team. We are here to talk to you. We are here to talk to our customers to find out what is working, what is not working, and where could we improve our services in Azure.